The Las Vegas Raiders have had another devastating loss, this time against the Jacksonville Jaguars. We're going to show you some clips and talk about some comments that players like Derek Carr and Davante Adams made after the game, and some things that we saw which might give us a clue as to what is happening inside the Raiders locker room, what is happening.
You know, I think there's a lot I want to say, but if I'm honest, I don't need to say it here.
What was the plan all along for Josh McDaniels and Mark Davis this season? Is it as they tell us? Was the playoffs in sight? And is Josh McDaniels really trying his hardest to win all of these games? Some of the decision making is making Raiders fans scratch their heads and wonder, hey, could it be otherwise? The Raiders have blown another 17-point lead. This is the third time they have this season so far. In 8 games, they've managed to do this when 61 years prior, they had only done this 5 times. And by the way, they are not only breaking Raiders records, but this is an NFL record here. Having 3 losses with a 17-point lead is actually tied for the highest in a single season in NFL history. So Josh McDaniels is breaking all kinds of records, but unfortunately for Raiders fans, it's these kind of records. Wow, now 67% of my viewers are not subscribed. Make sure you subscribe to this channel for more Raiders content. And this was a poor performance on the offensive side of the ball. Yes, the defense got completely owned too, especially in the second half of the game. The Raiders did not get 1 sack this game, yet again, the same as last week, not 1 sack. But the offensive side of the ball is where the money is at, and they failed tremendously, scoring 0 points in the second half. And this was a game where Derek Carr looked frustrated. Him and McDaniels on the sideline, it did not look too happy there. And even in this press conference after the game, he said there's a lot of things he wants to say right now, he just can't say it.
Sense or a similar feeling that you can look back on?
You know, I think there's a lot I want to say, but if I'm honest, I don't need to say it here, and there's things that will be said. There are things that need to be addressed and all those things, but I think for as a whole, the urgency part of it, that after 30 minutes of football, we have to learn that the game is not over. I feel like I've been in this situation a lot where new coaches or this or that, and you have to teach the new guys, like, this is how we do it, and this is the mentality, and this is and that gets tiring. But at the same time, it's my job. So there's some of that. So I'll say that right now for those things. But there's things in-house that we'll talk about, and man-to-man and all that kind of stuff that could be addressed.
And what was super weird is in this press conference, the video feed actually ended up cutting out.
Like we always say, like, having a really good week doesn't give you a win on Sunday.
You go on to say more things, who knows, we are not allowed to see. But it makes you wonder, these things that Derek Carr wants to say, is it about players or is it about Josh McDaniels? Both of these guys look frustrated at each other during the game, no doubt about that. However, Derek Carr also looked frustrated at teammates at times, getting upset at Mac Hollins on a critical 3rd down play that almost led to an interception. But Derek Carr is saying there's a lot of things he wants to say. He's going to say it privately. I feel like if it was about some of the other offensive players, he would actually make that type of comment. We've heard him say these things before. We've heard him say guys need to step it up at practice. We've heard him say practice matters, every rep matters. So when we go to practice, we need to be all in. But when he refuses to say anything, and when he has this frustrating moment with Josh McDaniels, because there are tons of players where we're wondering, hey, what is Josh McDaniels doing? My point being, the only reason why Derek Carr would say, hey, I'm not going to say anything right now, is because it's probably about somebody who ranks higher than the players. That's what I'm going to assume there. Sean Reed of The Athletic pointing out, when the Raiders have only 2 yards to go and they have a top 5 running back, they throw 3 passing plays in a row. And then after the game, the locker room was closed. It was kind of weird. And then you saw that there was a private conversation with Derek Carr and Davante Adams. The locker room was closed before then, so maybe that's why it was closed. They're having a little private meeting there. Who knows? And Davante Adams, he says, yes, the players have to execute, and he went really hard at the fact that the players need to execute.
You just got to continue doing whatever it was that put you in that position. I feel like we've gotten away from that too many times, whether it was just the way that we decided to attack them, or just the execution. Like I said, just finishing plays, because the players make the plays. It's not the scheme and all of that. That helps you, but at the end of the day, you can't put it on the coach to.
But I personally felt like he said that in order for him to make these other criticisms, which were at the decision making of the coaching staff throughout the game.
You just got to continue doing whatever it was that put you in that position. I feel like we've gotten away from that too many times. Whether it was just the way that we decided to attack them or just the execution. I think that, the way we were attacking in the first half was working to a certain extent. Obviously, like I said before, we could be better, but it was working. And I feel like we got away from that and, started playing the game a little different. And that's not the way we got to do it.
Davante Adams wonders why the Raiders tried to establish the run game when the passing game was working so well. He wanted to say, hey, I love my coaches. I'm not taking any shots at my coaches. And he even says, I wouldn't trade them for anything. He goes out of his way to say this, according to Paul Gutierrez. But he says, but at the end of the day, if I'm rolling in certain situations like that, or if the pass game is something that's helping us move the ball and win games, then obviously that's the idea. You want to stick with what's working. He's saying comments like, oh, we got away from what we were doing in the beginning of the game. Yes, he's blaming the execution, but at the same time, he is implying that the coaching staff went away with certain things that they were doing that were working throughout the game, and that led to these poor results. That led to this team not scoring any points in the second half of the entire football game. We've been frustrated with Josh McDaniels' play calling throughout the season. This has been something we have consistently been talking about week in and week out, especially when the Raiders lose critical football games, whether it's a silly, crazy trick play that Josh McDaniels wants to run or just a head-scratching play on a critical down. That's what we've seen every single week. And Harvester Sports, even before the game, saying, I will vomit if I see another Davante Adams jet sweep. And keep in mind, this is a podcast that has Derek Carr's nephew a part of it. Could this be a sentiment that is popular even among players on the offensive side of the ball and their families? The play calling is bad when Josh Dubois, the biggest Derek Carr hater in the world, is saying it looked like textbook bad coaching and bad play calling by the Raiders offense, defense, and special teams in the second half. Even this guy is looking at Josh McDaniels and wondering what the hell is going on. This guy loves jumping at the opportunity to shit on Derek Carr. And the idea is Josh McDaniels is going to go one and done. This is Miles Simmons of Pro Football Talk. It seems like no. Mark Davis said last Monday that Josh McDaniels would be the head coach for years to come. He went out of his way to say that because a lot of us were upset about what's happening with Josh McDaniels. We were wondering, what are all these private meetings about? The fact that they meet privately after very bad losses. Does this mean that Mark Davis is upset with Josh McDaniels? But when he went out there and said he is going to be the coach for years to come, what he basically said is, I already gave this guy the bag. So yeah, sorry, Raider Nation, he's going to be your coach for a few years at least. We know these coaching contracts are fully guaranteed. We know Josh McDaniels made $4 million a year as the offensive coordinator of the New England Patriots. Therefore, if he was going to leave them for the Raiders, he's obviously going to get paid more than $4 million a year to be the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. We know for sure this is at least a multi-year, fully guaranteed contract for Josh McDaniels of $5 million or more per year. We know that for sure. And then we got Derek Carr dumbfounded with the situation. And I know there's a lot of people who don't like Derek Carr out there. I know there were some bad throws by Derek Carr too today. The one where he underthrew Amir Abdullah could have been a touchdown there. But at the same time, I felt like the reason why the offense moved the ball was because Derek Carr was able to escape in the pocket and actually make some pretty good improvised throws on the run. And when you look at some of the play calling on the offensive side of the ball, I don't think you see people wide open. Think about the Jaguars, and you saw their team and Trevor Lawrence. There was several times in the game where you saw a receiver schemed wide open, and that rarely happened besides the touchdown to Davante Adams with that fake trick play. That was the only time you really saw somebody just completely wide open. And then you look at the play calling on the defensive side of the ball, but I don't want to blame the defense because the offense scored 0 points in the second half. However, there are times on critical downs where you just saw a silly play call by Patrick Graham. You got Max Crosby out there on coverage on a critical third down, and Lawrence throws it in his direction, and of course, yes, it's going to be complete. You saw things like that happen throughout the game. And Derek Carr says there's a lot he wants to say, but he's not going to say it publicly, and he seems upset at something. Josh McDaniels did not hesitate to get a little lippy with Derek Carr as well. And Raiders fans are wondering, what was the plan this year? Was this a rebuild year? Is Josh McDaniels not trying to win games? When you blow leads like this, 17-0 for the third time this year, tying the NFL record in a single season, to me, that tells me that either the players are just completely incompetent, which is what the coaching staff wants you to believe, which is what Ziegler tried to say in his press conference just last week. But now people are starting to get convinced that, hey, these coaches are not putting these guys in positions to win. They are blowing these huge leads. You even have people like Vic Tafur saying, hey, as much as the staff wants you to believe that it's execution, it looks like it's on the coaching staff. And there's a lot that Derek Carr wants to say, but he can't say it. It makes me wonder, are the players upset right right now that it doesn't seem like Josh McDaniels and the coaching staff is trying to put them in positions to win? Is there a possibility that due to the contract that Derek Carr signed when Davante Adams was traded here, he signed that deal that has a 1 year out? Are the Raiders tanking to get maybe a quarterback, or are they tanking to build more resources with Derek Carr for the future? As it stands right now, the Raiders would have the 3rd overall draft pick in the 2023 draft. Now, there are some quarterbacks they could get. You're probably not going to get to a Super Bowl, though, with a rookie quarterback. And if the Raiders have their eyes set on a Super Bowl in 2023, when it will be in Vegas, the Raiders could still do that with Derek Carr if they stack up on tons of resources with a high draft in 2023. Could that be the plan with the coaching staff? Or is it worse? I've said this before. Is it even worse? Is the coaching staff trying their absolute best right now? Is Josh McDaniels not trying to tank, actually trying to go all the way with Derek Carr this year and completely shitting the bed week in and week out, blowing 3 17-0 leads 3 times, tying the record in NFL history? That's actually a lot more dangerous. It's actually a lot scary to think that these guys are trying their best, because that means that we are completely screwed. But either way, things are starting to happen. Things are starting to collapse. The Raiders are at 2-6 right now, and fingers are starting to be pointed in certain directions. And if Josh McDaniels really believes Derek Carr is the problem, and if Mark Davis wants to side with Josh McDaniels, since it seems like he gave him a multi-year deal already, he could cut ties with Derek Carr at the end of the year. He really could cut ties. But these are all one-possession games. The Raiders have lost these on accident. It's nobody's fault. It just takes time. They'll get it once they get some of their right pieces in, some depth pieces. That could be a possibility. But when Raiders fans are out here, like Harvester Sports is saying, paying some of the highest prices in tickets for Allegiant Stadium, and we're a 2-6 team with a stacked roster, not only do we have, the offensive weapons that we talk about, but you also have to remember Denzel Perryman was a Pro Bowler last year. Max Crosby was a Pro Bowler last year. But all in all, we're going to have to wait and see how the story plays out, how the saga continues, what Josh McDaniels will do, what Mark Davis will do, how Derek Carr and Davante Adams will react. And we'll keep you up to date with everything happening with the Las Vegas Raiders. My name is WiFiWillie. Peace out, and I hope you have a good one.